everyone. Thank you.
Hi.
Either of these, same thing, pretty much?
Right into it.
Right into it.
Yeah,
Whoa.
very loudly into it.
That's maybe a little compressed. Anyway, so my talk, I'm a physical therapist, and we just heard a great talk from Dr. Call about the mind, mood, and motion, and I'm just going to keep going with that. So the title is Move It or Lose It, Parkinson-Specific Exercise 2.0. So we already know that, exercise is good for Parkinson's, right? But now we're at the 2.0. Why is it good? How is it good for you? What does it really do? So, my first slide here. If you're in a bad mood, go for a walk. If you're still in a bad mood, go for another walk. That is Hippocrates, the father of medicine. So, the human brain is developed to move. Back in the day, hunter-gatherers moved like 10 to 14 miles a day to travel, to hunt, to find a mate. And over the 500,000 years, the brain has grown because of our need to move and plan and predict. So we know that in Parkinson's there's a lack of dopamine, which makes movement irregular. This is the right thing. And we know that movement is good for people in general, whether you have Parkinson's or you don't. But it's especially important for people with Parkinson's. And studies show that it can also help improve your motor symptoms and your mood. But how does movement affect your brain or your mood? And what's the difference between movement for exercise and Parkinson's-specific exercise? I'm a little concerned that this is not the right slide. But anyway, meet Mr. Singh. This is an older version of my talk for some reason. Anyways, meet Mr. Singh. Anybody know Mr. Singh? So he is, at the age of 81, he lost his wife, his oldest son, and his daughter, like all in very short succession. And so at 81, he became very depressed. And then all of a sudden, one day on the TV, the London Marathon was on, and he's like, oh, well, maybe I'll start running. So he started running, and he started running marathons. And he is now 108 years old. He ran his last full marathon at 100 years old and retired from running at 102 years old. But I think he might still do a couple of... No, I think he officially stopped running at like 100 or something. Anyways, but so he got rid of his depression by running. And the American Psychiatric Association recommends aerobic exercise as a treatment for depression. And in some studies, moderate intensity exercise compared to lower intensity exercise was as effective as antidepressants. This is definitely the wrong talk, though. We'll see where it goes. Movement helps depression. So there are some studies out there that actually look at movement and physical activity on depression in Parkinson's specifically. So this was a systematic review. They look at a bunch of different articles, 769 articles, 11 studies, included 342 patients, 17 types of physical activity. And the results were that physical activity, especially aerobic training, significantly improves the patient's UPDRS. Do you guys know what the UPDRS is? The Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale. It's something that your neurologist does for you when you do these things and you ask your questions and you do all those things. Anyways, it's a number. And so that the physical activity helped those numbers. And it also helped the Beck Depression Inventory and quality of life. One of the notes there says that physical activity needs to last at least 12 weeks to decrease depressive symptoms. And we'll come back to that. So exercise also helps, where are we? It also helps with anxiety. So This is another systematic review. They looked at a whole bunch of articles. They looked at 15 studies on 675 patients, and they showed that high-intensity programs showed greater effects than lower-intensity programs. So there's kind of a trend here. The harder you're working out, the more it seems to be helping you. And I had my little arrow because exercise is a mild stressor. When you move your body and you exercise, you're creating a little bit of stress. So the more you do that, the more you kind of get used to your body being in a little bit of stress, and then it takes your body more stress in order to get anxious. Make sense? Right? You're kind of getting used to the stress. So that allows you to handle stress and anxiety better. So here's another study. Aerobic exercise also improves mood, cognition, and language. And this one was it's pretty small, 30 people. They randomized to a control versus one group that just did stretching and balancing, and one did aerobic exercise. And so they progressed from like 20 minutes up to 45 minutes, adding about 5 minutes more each time to increase their tolerance, and as high as 75% of their max heart rate. They started at like 50%, so they didn't just throw you into the deep end. You kind of build up to it and condition yourself to it. It was 3 times a week for 16 weeks. And what they found was aerobic exercise is a viable intervention for PD that can be protective against increased depressive symptoms and can improve several non-motor domains. So another study, lots of studies. And this one is a similar thing about improving mood, cognition, and sleep. And in PD, aerobic exercise may increase the production of growth factors, which Dr. Call talked about, and promote gray and white matter changes. This is important. This is actually showing that changes in the brain are happening on whatever, imaging that they're doing. And especially in the prefrontal regions, which is up in the front here, and both of which may contribute to improved cognitive function and mood. Right? So, neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is when your brain basically can grow new neurons. And aerobic exercise, especially when sustained, leads to neuron growth in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a certain part of your brain. So they did these rat studies, and Dr. Call talked about they did the little rat on the treadmill. Well, they're doing a lot of that in research these days. Well, this one particularly shows that when the rat was on the treadmill running a lot, they grew little baby neurons in their hippocampus. They took their little baby brains and they autopsied them and whatever they did to actually look at and see these new little baby neurons. So, and the hippocampus is really important. It helps with your emotions, navigation, spatial orientation, learning, coordination of memory, and other really important things. So exercise through this mechanism helps raise levels of serotonin and other neurotransmitters associated with depression and anxiety. So, my slides have changed. Anyways, how big is your brain? So, and how fit are you? So, the more fit you are, they show that you have a bigger brain. So, are you on the couch? Are you kind of, if you're depressed, you're really not moving very much. And in fact, it's really a sort of a survival of the fittest thing. If you're depressed and you're at home, you're telling your body, all systems shut down. I don't need to go find food. I don't need to meet friends. I don't need to go out. And you're essentially telling your whole body to just shut down. So the opposite of that is, how fit are you? Are you out there exercising and meeting people and using your brain and creating a bigger brain? So, movement and brain change. So this actually is adapted from Becky Farley, who's a physical therapist down in Tucson who started Power. Does anybody know what Power is? One person? 4 people. Okay, POWER stands for Parkinson's Wellness Recovery. And for physical therapists, it's really the gold standard for Parkinson-specific exercise and training. Anyway, back in the day, so she did this presentation, and this is from her kind of presentation. So back in the day, they used to say, you know, don't challenge yourself. Don't challenge yourself physically or cognitively if you were diagnosed with Parkinson's. And they said, take it easy. You know, life should be quiet and regular. That's what this guy, William, said in the 19th century. Well, nowadays we know that, okay, that's probably not the best advice, but it was hard to do research back in those days, so they've been, you know, working at that. And they started with animal studies. It's really hard to study exercise because there's really not so much money to be made in exercise, if you think about it, right? Oh, you mean I can cure my Parkinson's by just walking and running on the treadmill and running marathons? You know, that's not quite gonna get all your sponsorship money. Anyway, so these animal studies started early, and now, though, they're really starting to get into human studies. So with the human studies, they've shown aerobics is there to enhance your motor symptoms and your brain and your mood, and it can help with, it needs to be progressive, dynamic, and you need to really keep at it. And, you know, the trouble, I think, sometimes with research, and I just showed you a whole bunch of research studies, is that you have to, in research, wait for the result. Like, they may know, some people may know, you may know that exercise makes you feel better, makes you think better, makes your body feel better, makes your mind feel better, but the research, you know, hasn't necessarily definitively come out with the gold star and all these things. So sometimes we have to wait. And I'm kind of in the camp of, if it works for you now, like, you don't have to wait for the research study to come out 10 years from now. You can start that now, if it's helpful for you now, right? So sometimes we're waiting a lot to really get the definitive answer. Well, the research doesn't say that, you know, whatever helps me. So anyways, we're going to take a little break right here since we talked about the power, and we're going to do a little movement because you guys are starting to fall asleep. And maybe this is a good time to go to my other slides. What happened? Last modified yesterday. That's the USB.
I have a different version too, yeah.
Anyways, okay, so we're going to do a little movement here. We can do this in standing or in sitting, and I have completely lost my talk. I don't know where it is. Anyways, we're going to do a song. So with POWER, Parkinson's Wellness Recovery, there's a reason behind the movements, right? So we're going to do 4 different types of movements, and the first one is going to be what we call a power up, and that is for it's for using your anti-gravity muscles. It's for posture, helping you stand up straight, because we know that posture is one of the things that's affected in Parkinson's. Then we're going to do a weight shifting thing where we rock side to side. Then we're going to do a rotation, because rotation is one of the first things that goes in Parkinson's, and we want to keep that functional and moving really well, because you need rotation to do so many things: get in and out of bed, putting on your seatbelt, you know, all these different things. And then the last part is this step. So you can do this in sitting or in standing. And because we're kind of tight in here, I'm going to ask that my assistant Steph here, who teaches with me at PD Connect, is going to go to her. We're going to go to our left, and you guys are going to go to your right. Okay? All right. The song is called Move Your Feet, and it's going to start with, you're just going to move your feet forward and back and forward and back. You can do this in sitting, or you can do this in standing. Okay, here we go. So we're going to start forward and back and forward and back. Forward and back, forward and back. Good. Like you're stepping over the line and then stepping behind. Work on your posture. shifting. Reach all the way over there. And reach with both your hands active. Back to forward and back. Forward and back. Okay, we're going to twist here. Open, twist, open, twist, open, twist, open, twist. Nice big movements. All the way across. Big step. Open and twist. 2 in, 2 out. Wide, wide, narrow, narrow. Wide, wide, narrow, narrow. Wide, wide, narrow, narrow. Wide, wide, narrow, narrow. Okay, next one's just a little bit of fun. We're going to step together, 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 step together. Keep going. Step together, step together. Let's go. Forward and back. Forward and back. Forward and back. It's a 3-minute song, guys. You're almost there. Forward and back. Good. Keep going. Go to completion. Wait for it. Wait for it. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. All right. So, now that I have no idea where we are in my slide.
Is that
Okay. So, aside from medications, what makes people improve or worsen in Parkinson's? And one of the answers is neuroplasticity. So the Dalai Lama every year gets together with some really brainy people, and he has this neuroplasticity forum. And so this one particular year he had Dr. Ed Taub, Dr. Norman Deutsch, and Dr. Mike Mersnick. So the first one is Dr. Ed Taub, who's from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. I call this the lost and the found, and he basically works in stroke. And if you've had a stroke, you know, you're paralyzed, you can't move, and your brain kind of shuts down. So he came up with this thing, and back in the day, they used to kind of let you rest for a while. Like, oh, he's had a stroke, let's leave him alone for a while. But now they came up with this thing called constraint-induced therapy. And what they do is they do this very specific protocol. And what you'll see on the left here is that the brain, after some time, if it hasn't been moving, it kind of goes away. This left slide here, on this left brain. See how that little spot is really small? So with the constraint therapy, they do these things. So let's say I'm paralyzed on my right hand. They would put your left hand, your working hand, in a cast. So, and then they say, okay, go ahead, feed yourself. And you're like, wait, what are you talking about, doc? I can't. I'm paralyzed and I'm in a cast. So they put you in a restraint, and then they do this intense rehab. They work really hard with you, and it's pretty intense. And they do this thing called shaping, where like you make little progress over, and accomplish little steps, not throw you into the deep end and feel like you're going to drown. So you want to feel like you're accomplishing something. And then once you start learning some skills, they put you into these diverse settings so that it's not just, I can use my hand to feed myself. No, now we want to know, I can use my hand to write, I can use my hand to open curtains and whatnot. And then there's this thing called transition, which is when what you learn in clinic, you actually take home to your real life. One of the most difficult things for a physical therapist, me, is when you work with someone in the clinic and you see them get better and then all of a sudden, they leave. So this is what happens in class sometimes. I get this, some people walk in and they'll be like, hey, it's great to be here, right? And then we'll do some exercises and we'll do this, and then we'll count and we'll do this. And then class is over and it's like, all right, man, that was such a good class. I'll see you later. How many of you do, haha, yeah, okay, well, I won't, call anyone out. But that's a really important part right there. You're learning something when you're going to these classes or to your physical therapist or wherever you're going, right? Make that transition into your real life. Because otherwise, it's just sort of like, oh, you learned it, now you're in the parking lot and you've forgotten it. And in order for it to really make some brain change, you've got to incorporate it into your life. Okay, so the slide on the right, though, showed that, the brain actually starts having more activity. Where it once was lost, now it's found. Okay, so here's a little video of someone learning to walk in. So on the far left, you'll see they have small steps, struggling, small steps, and then holding on. And as you can see, some of the other videos, all of a sudden now bigger steps, not holding on, and improving. That's neuroplasticity right there. Right there. So all of these videos were from my colleague Claire McLean, who's down in Orange County, and she's an amazing physical therapist down there. She's really good at taking these before and after photos and has many, many of them. But that's what neuroplasticity is right there. It's not about the medication necessarily. It's about concentrating, practicing, improving little by little, and then really working at it to take home that skill into everyday life. So one of the other people in that neuroplasticity forum was Dr. Norman Deutsch, who wrote this book, The Brain's Way of Healing. In chapter 2, there's Dr. Pepper, or no, not Dr. Pepper. There is, I really wish I had my other presentation at this point. Jon Pepper, thank you. But so what I'm talking about here, that's the next slide actually, but stay on this one for a sec. What I'm talking about with this prefrontal cortex, this is when you're thinking. So we know that in Parkinson's, the stuff that gets messed up is when it's in that automatic zone, like the walking and the handwriting, stuff when you don't really have to think about it, right? So you walk into your doctor's office and you're kind of walking like this, same thing again, right? And then all of a sudden the doctor says, okay, please walk across the room, or let me see how you're walking today. And then all of a sudden you go like this. Right, Doc? Why is that? That's because you're thinking about it. So you're using your brain to make those big steps, to swing your arms, to have the good posture. So I've kind of created this analogy, which now doesn't have a photo of it, but the automatic stuff is like the highways that are clogged up and gridlocked, right? Your highways right now are kind of gridlocked, but there's a frontage road, and you can take that frontage road. And the more you take that frontage road, the easier it'll be for you to get around everything and do the things that you need. So the thinker can get across the room with good arm swing and good big steps and posture. And the doer is just going to walk across and shuffle their feet or whatever. Okay. Now we're on to Jon Pepper. So Jon Pepper's from South Africa, and he's like 85 years old now. He's had Parkinson's for like 300 years, no, maybe 35 years. But he says that he hasn't used medication for like the last 10 years because he's been able to do this thing which he calls conscious walking. And we invited him to San Rafael. I'm from Marin County, and we invited him to San Rafael a couple of years ago to do a demonstration. And he wrote this book called Reverse Parkinson's. And so in this presentation, it was like this big, there was a gentleman who was in a wheelchair. And so Jon Pepper went up to him and he said, okay, sir, I'd like you to stand up. So the guy stands up. And then he says, okay, I want you to go up onto your toes and back on your heels. So he did that. And then he says, okay, now I want you to kick your leg out. Okay, kick your other leg out. Okay, now swing your arm. No, come on, swing your arm. So he's like, okay. So he swings his arm. And he says to the gentleman, you have now just done all the things you need to do to walk. So let's walk. So he takes him by the arm, and the guy's a little surprised, and they walk across the room. And the room was like about this big, like from here to the other end. And about halfway there, he stops. He's like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? You know? And Jon turns to him and he just says, it's okay, you forgot. You forgot that you have legs. You've been sitting in this wheelchair for so long, you forgot. So let's just reconnect. So go up on your toes, back on your heels. Let's kick out your legs. Let's swing your arms, and let's walk. So they walk. And he walks all the way to the end of to the auditorium, and then he turns around, and he's like smiling. His family's crying, you know, all this stuff. It was really pretty incredible. If anybody was ever there or have seen him in person. Oh, one person, 2 people, 3 people. Oh, okay, good. Anyways, so he came back, and it was really like, wow, that was incredible. So Jon Pepper created this thing called conscious walking. So he's essentially retraining his brain to not take those crowded freeways, but to rely on those frontage roads. So when he walks, he's a little bit, you know, kind of brainy type. But anyway, so when he walks, he thinks, okay, heel strike, I'm going to lean on this side and push off on this side, and I'm going to weight shift, I'm going to do this, I'm going to swing my arm, I'm going to keep my head up. So he thinks about a lot of these things, and he walks very quickly too. Because we asked him, okay, so like how fast do you walk? He was just like, he really walks. Anyways, so that's Jon Pepper. And that's another example of neuroplasticity, because he basically just, you know, used his brain and his movement to reshape his brain. And his mood, too. He would say, you know, there was a time when he got injured, he hurt his back, and he couldn't walk. So all of a sudden now, all of his symptoms came back, and his mood was sad again, and he was depressed. But then once he recovered from his back injury, he got better. Okay, next one. Can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Yes.
Yes, of course you can. So this is from Dr. Mersnick, who's out at UCSF, and he wrote the book. His newest book is called Soft Wired. And we used to think that, you know, the brain was just like a rock. It's not really a rock. It's much more shape. You can shape it much more. Anyway, yes, by practicing, focusing, and learning. So this top brain is a young brain. Then you have the old brain, and you can see the colors are changing because things are starting to diminish. And then you have an old brain that's been trained, and the color comes back. Same with some of these other ones, the neural coordination. Lots of color and sparks and lights on the top. The middle is a little bit darker, and then the bottom one has light again. Same thing with the neural wiring. So with Parkinson's, right, it's that wiring and that sending of the signals that gets disrupted. It's the freeway that gets jammed. You can't send the signals when the freeways are jammed. So all of those things, yes, you can definitely retrain the brain. Another video of practice, practice, practice. So on the left, here she is trying to jump rope, can barely step over the rope because she hasn't practiced this. It's a skill that was not used. And now there she is. You guys see that? You want to see it again?
Yeah.
On the left, she can barely put the rope over her legs. And then December 2016, she can jump a little. 2017, she's really jumping. 2019, it's like, woo! Keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. I thought this was a progressive disease. I thought you were supposed to get worse with time. That's not what's happening here, right? Okay. So, neuroplasticity is really a use it or lose it. Or in my case, the title of this talk is Move It or Lose It. And it's really the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience or following injury. And the human brain can prune or grow. The brain cells can die off or they can grow depending on what the situation is. So neuroplasticity can lead to good movements, or if you practice this all the time, you're going to get really good at this all the time. And what does this say about your mood too? Or your brain, your cognitive function, apathy, right? Okay. So, thanks. Hot off the press. Okay, this is a little nerdy of me and I gotta go through it quickly. But, doing the research, we came across this guy, Adam and Lundquist and Giselle Petzinger down at USC, and they do amazing work on exercise and neuroplasticity. But what they found is that they kind of know why things work better now. And what they did was they looked at how astrocytes, which is this like other piece of, it's a different kind of cell that helps in that communication of cell to cell. And maybe just go to the next slide for a second. Oh wait, go back. Okay. We'll stay here for a second. Okay. What they found was when you exercise a lot, your astrocytes can grow. And they grow in different ways, and they can, and one of the things that makes these astrocytes grow is lactate, or lactic acid. Remember that lactic acid when you work out, you feel that burn in your leg, you're like, oh no, I hate this stuff, I can't take it anymore. Ooh, it's supposed to be bad, right? Well no, now they found that it's in your brain. And when it's in your brain, it actually helps these astrocytes grow better. And when these astrocytes grow better, they do really good things for your neuroplasticity and your movement. And so, okay, so go ahead. This was just another little piece that came to it, which was like, okay, well, what does this have to do? Well, what about this? I came across this. Peripheral administration of lactate produces antidepressant-like effects. That means even if it has to do with the lactate. When you exercise, you build that lactate in your legs, and that's also being built in your brain, and that's probably why and how you are creating this better circuit and why you might feel better, is because it has this antidepressant-like effect. Okay, so this is the neural threesome, and the blue things are the neurons, and they're trying to talk to each other, right? And normally, that's where you're having problems in Parkinson's. Those little neurotransmitters aren't getting the message sent across. When you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I feel so weak, I can't get out of bed, what's going on? It takes me so long now. It's not that you're weak. It's just that the message from your brain isn't getting to where you want it to go quickly enough. It's that freeway that's all clogged up again. So this green thing is the astrocyte, and it helps pull those neurons together to make that signal become more efficient. And so that's one kind of sciencey way of looking at how exercise helps and makes your mood better and makes your brain better and do all the neuroplasticity stuff. Okay. Back to mood, apathy, right? So here's a study that looks at habitual exercises versus sedentary people with Parkinson's. And what they found was the habitual exercises actually have a more robust dopamine system in general. So whether their brains are more activated to do better things with the dopamine that they have, whether it's through medication or you're making it through your exercise, whatever, you're just more robust. So it responds better. Your dopamine, the increased dopamine responds better to exercise. you're more willing to work hard for a reward. So when you're at home and you're like, oh man, I don't want to get dressed, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to go to class, I just want to stay here and lie in bed and watch 6 hours of binge TV or whatever, you know, the person that's a habitual exerciser will think, I know it's hard for me to get to class, but I feel so much better afterwards. I feel better, and not only for an hour or two after class, but usually it lasts the next day too. And so that's the reward that we want to be thinking about when you're thinking about going to class. It's like, don't think about how hard it is and how much traffic there will be. Think about, I'm going to feel so much better. Keep your eye on the prize. So, apathy and bradykinesia are less when you start early. So we want sedentary people with Parkinson's, when you're first diagnosed, we want to get to you early to start that training, to start building those goals and that kind of habitual exercise behavior so that you can come to classes and make your brain more ready for, make that whole robust dopamine system get started. Okay. So I have to put in a physical therapy joke in here somewhere. And I have more jokes on my other slide. Strength training improves your brain. I'm sorry. What color TheraBand did you suggest? You know? So this is from strength. Strength training is also important. And this is a study where they did just like stretching and balance, and then they had one group that did strength training at the gym, and they just did leg press and a bunch of other things. And then they had another group that did strength and instability. And only the group that did strength with the instability, which means that they had like a BOSU, like a balance, like a, you guys know what a BOSU is? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, one of those things where they put something to make it wobbly and it required more balance. When you just add a little bit of balance to your strength training, it requires more cognitive load. And so their timed up and go was better, their UPDRS was better, their MoCA was better, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment better, and their quality of life was better. Because when you're doing something with strength and balance, it's a highly complex skill. And when you're doing that, that means more cognitive load. And more cognitive load means more brain work. And more brain work, hey, how come you have part of my slides here? Anyway, so more brain work means better brain circuitry and better balance and better quality of life. So balance is really, it's a brain thing. Walking across the street and timing, it's about cognitive load. Walking across the street, you need to know where's the sidewalk? How much time do I have left? When does it turn green? Watch out for the cars, watch out for the people. It's a brain thing. So all this stuff, this exercise is helping your brain, along with helping your quality of life and your mood. So, this is a little video. So at PD Connect, we do exercises, and we do lots of other different things because I like variety, and the research shows that we want variety in our life. So this is a little thing from what we call the Tandem Bike Project. Once a year, we have a booth, and we do this tandem bike forced exercise project. So here's a little video to show one of our people from class balancing before class. Now she's on the treadmill, on the bike. And now she's balancing, still balancing. So even just a short little bout of high intensity improved her balance. She didn't practice standing on one leg for 10 minutes. She just rode the bike for 10 minutes. But it helped her balance. Okay, practical tips. Start with a PD-specific physical therapist. It's really important to have one that has some PD training, because if you were to come to me back in the day when I worked in outpatient ortho, I would have treated you just like another ankle patient or a knee patient. I've had you do, heel raises and squats and stuff like that. And it's, now that I've done this for 4 years and done many certifications, it's not just heel raises and squats, it's a lot more. Aim for exercising at least 4 days a week. 7 days is better. If you're not exercising at least 3 days a week, it doesn't even count. Okay? It's really important. Aim for higher intensity, at least 150 minutes a week. I did the math, it's like, about 20 minutes a day. That 150 is pretty standard, but, aim for, and 20 minutes a day or whatever, 30, 40 minutes, 3 days a week, whatever. But you really want to be exercising all the time. And then the strength. Add that component of strength in there, at least 2 days a week. And intensity. What is intensity? Intensity means your heart rate's getting up, you're feeling like, it's getting hard to have a conversation. That's how you measure. You don't have to get a Fitbit or a heart rate monitor, which we do use in our classes because we use it as a kind of biofeedback to show you, hey, are you working out here? Or, your heart rate's at like 70 and we really want you to be at 110. So let's pick it up a little bit. So, but without any of that, it's your perceived exertion. How hard is this for you? You want it to be up there. Try new things. This is really important. This is good for your mood. This is good for the brain. Try new things. Walk a different route. Try a different class. Try different foods. It's good for the brain. Dual tasking, even if you're just walking, you can do some simple problems, some simple math problems or word problems. Like one of my favorites is like, name a state that has the letter R in it somewhere. Or, if you're walking down the street and you see a building, now spell building backwards in your head. Or whatever, anything, backward spelling. Listen to faster music to make your intensity faster, right? What are you listening to or are you not listening to? Keep practicing a new skill, even as it gets harder. This is called learning. And the other part of this is, if it starts to get hard, don't give up. Just give yourself more time. It's really important not to give up that skill. That was the lost and the found slide, right? If you give up that skill, you may lose that skill. Be in nature, really important too. People with Parkinson's actually do better on like trails than they do walking on the sidewalk. Why is that? They're thinking. Thank you. I thought you were asleep. All right, make it fun,
I was
right?
listening.
Okay, make it social. Social. Of all the things that make your Parkinson's progression go faster, it's loneliness. If you're at home watching your videos, that's great. We love that. But it's better if you can come out and join a class or be with other people or invite people over to do the videos with you. And then make it consistent, right? And then, of course, safety first. Always, always, always. Do what you can. Do the hard stuff, but make it safe. If you want to try something difficult, be close to a wall. If you're worried about your balance, hold on to something at first until you're more confident in it. Okay, how you exercise is important. So, attention, right? You want to pay attention when you're moving. What are you doing? Are you just moving or are you paying attention? 2, challenging. It's got to be challenging. If it's too easy, you're not going to really change the brain. Goal-oriented. What do you want to do? Why are you doing this anyway? Do you want to see your grandkids, soccer game or walk down the aisle with your daughter or something like that? Task-specific. What are you training for, right? Are you training something? What functional thing do you want to learn, right? Diversity. Make it different. Try, if you're just a walker and you love to walk and it's easy, try something else. And of course, make it fun. Orange and blue are my favorite colors because I'm from home, but that's an aside. Okay. Take home message. Sitting is a new smoking. Let's keep moving, okay? Number 1, our greatest challenge is immobility. Just have to keep moving. Number 2, higher intensity exercise improves neurogenesis and brain factors through more robust neural connections. We just saw all that weird sciencey stuff about the neural threesome and all that stuff, and the brain, the gray matter, the BDNF. Increased brain factors help depression and anxiety, right? PD-specific exercise requires thinking and challenge. And neuroplasticity can happen at any age and at any stage, right? So there's a time for you to go and build up that lactic acid, get on the bike, get on the treadmill, whatever you want to do. Just don't think about anything, just do it, get that sweat going. But then there's time to do the PD-specific stuff where you really want to think and change the brain. Okay, one last slide. What's the difference between movement for exercise and Parkinson-specific exercise? So movement alone will help with building the freeways, and especially intense movement, just getting that lactic going, building those freeways. And 2, PD-specific exercise requires thinking, and it's like building the frontage roads. Your freeways are all clogged up. You need to build those frontage roads to get past the good ones. That's it.